I know with companies like Pilot, you work with their US division, but do you ever have the option of carrying their products intended for Asia if you believe your customer base would respond well? Or are you able to special order at the very least? Okay, so you're asking me specifically about Pilot, but this is that's a really good example because Pilot does seem to have a lot of different variations of their pens, or maybe whole models of pens that are slightly different, that are available in Asia and not in the US, or sometimes available in Europe or Asia and other places, and it seems to be anywhere but the US. So that I can go into a little bit, but this is not an exclusively kind of Pilot question, because there's definitely other pen companies that offer things in some parts of the world and not others, and that's nothing unusual. The first thing I want to say is the world is a very big place. It is. Geographically, it's very big. Culturally, there's a lot of differences in different areas. On the internet and in forums where you're focused on fountain pens, it seems like the world is very small, because everybody in all corners of the earth who are interested in fountain pens that can at least speak somewhat of the same language can all talk about pens, and it's just like, hey, that's cool. It's just another pen person. But geographically and politically, economically, dealing with taxes and shipping and all this stuff, physically getting goods to different places of the world can sometimes be more complicated than you would expect. And there's a whole layer of things that distributors go through with the manufacturers at the global level that even I don't understand for sure. So the way that we're structured with Pilot, and the way that a lot of companies are who are global companies, is the world is a huge place. There's different rules and taxes and regulations and currency exchange rates and all kinds of stuff, and all that's changing and ebbing and flowing all the time. So for one manufacturer of a pen to try to equalize and manage all of that throughout the world is incredibly difficult. So there's distributorships that are set up because the distributors understand marketing for their given area. They understand supply and demand, and they deal with currency exchanges. They can hold stock in that country, and ride out some shortages and overages and stuff like that you deal with at the manufacturing level. So there's actually a lot of benefits to having a distributor in your kind of geographic area. And yes, there is a percentage of a markup that happens as a result of that. But the thing that most people don't realize is you think like, oh, buying direct from the manufacturer, that automatically means it's going to be cheaper. Not necessarily. A lot of times you're going to end up in a situation where you would still have to absorb those same costs, because it's just the same work that has to be done. It would just have to be done at the manufacturer, and that's not their special, thing. They would just want to make their pens. And they don't want to necessarily deal with how to market in every single area of the world. So anyway, that's a whole other thing. But for us specifically, you're talking about a pen, and it's frustrating, and I've experienced the same thing, because you're like, okay, I see the Pilot Custom 823 in smoke instead of amber. I really want it in smoke. It's over there in Japan. I can look at a Japanese eBay seller that can sell me the pen from Japan. Why can't I buy it at gouletpens.com? What is wrong with you guys? It's Pilot. You sell a lot of Pilot. What's going on? Some of that is like, yeah, what is going on? Why can't I just get some of those things? Some of it is supply and demand. Some of it is, yes, you get in the same situation like I talked about a little bit ago. It's like everybody wants broad nibs or talks about broad nibs. Nobody actually buys broad nibs. I'm not nobody, but not as many people as would be needed to make it obvious to carry them. It's the same kind of thing. Like Pilot, just like any other company, they make things in Japan for the Japanese market. The Japanese market is very large for fountain pens. It's very imbibed in their culture, way more than in the US. So in the US, we are just kind of, used to always getting the things that we want. And when we can't, and we see that some other country has it and we want it, that gets very frustrating, as it would for probably anybody, but especially I think in the US here. So when it's over there overseas, it's like, why can't we have this? But at the same time, there's a lot of different factors and decisions that go into that. Sometimes it's production capabilities, like literally they can only make so many of those pens, and they want to prioritize them into the Asian market. And they don't want to expand outside of that because they don't have capacity, and some of it has to do with internal equipment and just all that kind of stuff, and they just don't want to deal with it. So they just limit it to certain markets. And yes, of course, you as an individual can buy now with globalization and shipping overseas and stuff. You could buy from a Japanese retailer who's selling it out of the Japanese market, and that's a whole other thing. But to actually distribute it, worldwide. They just may not have the capabilities to do that for those individual products. So that's a lot of times what ends up happening is there's not enough capacity to produce them. There's not enough demand for them, even though it seems like there may be the quantities needed. Like we've inquired with we'd inquired with Lamy. Hope I'm not over speaking too much here, but we'd inquired with Lamy with carrying a purple safari. So this was several years ago, and we were like, we want a purple safari so bad. What if we special ordered one or had one designed or whatever? What kind of quantities would we be talking about to make that happen? And it was something like 50 or 100,000 pens. Like, I don't even remember exactly what the number was, but it was so astronomical. And like, we sell a lot of pens here, but we don't sell that many pens. So it was just like, okay, so sometimes it's like you think, oh, there's all this demand. It's like, is there 100,000 pens demand worth for one color? Okay, yeah, I guess not. So I see why now. And it's like the distributor, just like I'm a retailer and I have a lot of customers, you guys are all my fans, my customers, my peeps, my bros and gals. And that's great. We enjoy our time together and we get to have conversation back and forth. It's the same kind of thing like that, but for the distributors. So if you think about, for the ease of things, let's say I have 1,000 customers as a retailer. We have more than that here. As you all know, you can guess there's 60,000 subscribers on YouTube. We have more than 1,000 customers, but let's just say that's a nice round number. Well, let's say that, there's 1,000 retailers in the United States, which there's probably a lot more than that for Pilot. So Pilot has 1,000 customers who are 1,000 retailers, and they each have 1,000 customers, let's say, for the ease of things. Well, if Pilot as a distributor in the US had to talk to not 1,000 customers, but 1,000 times 1,000, whatever that number is, 10 million, that is too much for them to deal with directly. So that's why you have the retailer-distributor relationship. Same kind of thing when you go up to the manufacturer level, they have multiple distributors to help support all of those retailers. Think about it as a manufacturer. Pilot, I think, has 3 global distributors, plus they sell directly in Japan. It's a little bit different there, but let's call it 4 because they sell directly in Japan, and then they have distributors set up in Europe and Asia and US. So when you're talking about having 4 customers as a manufacturer to your distributors, instead of, let's say there were 1,000 in every single region, retailers, for a manufacturer to have relationship with 4 distributors instead of 4,000 retailers around the world, that's where a lot of benefit of distributorships come up. So with that, you're going to get a little bit, sometimes there will be very legitimate reasons that's just like, what, it's not practical, it's too many pens, the demand really isn't quite there, and the distributors really have to kind of make that decision. A lot of the reason the distributors are there is because I, as GouletPens.com, might be like, everybody's screaming at me to get extra fine nibs on the Pilot Metropolitan. I've told them that like 8,000 times. I would love to have that, but I might be 1 out of 1,000 retailers they have, and every other retailer they have is like, nah, nobody cares about that. So Pilot, as a distributor, has to say, you're just 1 out of 1,000 people. That's not the hottest thing. There's, 99 or 99,000 people are asking about a custom 823 and smoke. So we're going to get that instead of the extra fine, so it's like there's things like that happen just at the even higher scales for talking about, making this kind of stuff, because it's very involved when they make these pens. And, I can understand it's frustrating when you see stuff that's not available in different places, but as I've inquired more and more over time, I understand that there are usually pretty good explanations for these things. Sometimes though, it's literally just like, yeah, they really could do it, and just somebody's making a call somewhere, it's an organization filled with people. Sometimes it's just they don't have the right information, or they just, they maybe are missing an opportunity. They could sell an extra, whatever, a smoke, custom 823, and they're just missing it. They're just missing out on that opportunity. That could be the possibility as well. So I always try to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I always try to pass along the feedback that we get here at Goulet to them, and they have a great respect for us, for that, Pilot specifically, and a lot of other distributors, manufacturers. But we are still just 1 out of many. customers of theirs who are the retailers. So it all kind of gets put into a bucket, and then they have to make a decision at a very large scale about what it is that they're going to pursue. So the important thing with all of this is that feedback is key. And that's where social media is so great, is because it speeds up the process of gaining that feedback. And I can post a video like this, and you all can jump in the comments and say, smoke 823, oh my gosh. And I could go to Pilot and I could say, we have 9,000 comments of people saying they will come to you and beat you up if you do not offer the custom 823. Sorry, I went kind of dark on that, but I could say, like, there's crazy demand for this, look, here it is. Then they might say, oh, okay, yeah, I guess you're right. It's not such a guess anymore. Let's go ahead and give it a try. So that's how this whole thing can really work and can really help out. So, but it's a big, it's a big question mark, and you're dealing with things in the, possibly tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of quantities when you're talking about a global kind of thing for new pens. That's a huge gamble if something is going to be off the mark. So they've got to make intelligent decisions where they can in terms of distribution and stuff like that. It's a very complicated thing, especially talking Pilot. I don't know exactly how much they sell, but it's easily $1 billion in pens globally. So there's a lot there to deal with, and certainly us in our niche little area think, well, I just want that Smoke 823, but it can't always be available across the entire world. But the feedback is key. We keep asking for things. That's why we have a fine nib on the Pilot Metropolitan. Yes, because when it originally came out, it was only in medium. A good medium for sure, but it was about 2 years almost before the fine nib came out. Do you guys remember that? Those of you who've been around for a little bit, you remember it was just a medium on the Metropolitan. As soon as that thing came out, you can see it. I have it on video saying, this is going to be one of the greatest starter pens. I want them to have it in a fine nib. As soon as that pen came out, I said that, and every time I talked to them, I was like, when's pen coming in a fine nib? Can we get a fine nib? How about a fine nib? What about a fine nib? And me continuing to say that, as well as a lot of other people. It's not just me that made that happen, as a lot of other people did. They finally brought in the fine, and now, voila, fine's amazing. So that's how it all works. Cool. Just glad I could help clear that up for you a little bit. Oh, and then, sorry, I went really long on this question, and I missed a phone call in the meantime. So the other thing is special orders. So that's a whole other thing. Special orders, I touched on it a little bit, like with the whole Lamy thing, but a lot of times special orders is going to really come down to logistics, how large the company is and how much they're willing to do special orders. We have a really mixed experience with special orders. A lot of times we love to do it, but the stock is so spotty, especially for these more specialized things, that, it's like it would seem so easy to get it, but it's like sometimes, they have all these different variations. And for example, I'm just going to use a Smoke Custom 823 because that's what I'm running with on this example. They might make the Smoke Custom 823 for 2 months and make a 3-year supply of it. I'm just making this up. This isn't confirmed, but that might be how their production schedule is. And then they use all the same equipment, it would make sense, to make the amber one and then a clear one or whatever. And they might change that over. So depending if the Smoke one just goes gangbusters and they sell out of it, all the retailers buy it up, well, it's not in their production schedule to make it for another year. That could be the case. Again, this is all hypothetical here, but it might be that way. And so what happens is it all gets bought up by the Japanese retailers because that's who they allocate the stock to, and then there's none left. They don't have any because they've gotten rid of it all, and they're not going to make it anymore for another year unless they choose to not make the clear or something like that. And so globally, even if we wanted a special order, it would be, oh, they don't even have it. So we would take a special order as a retailer, and then they would say, yeah, we don't have it. We'll let you know when we can get more. And I'm not joking. Like, there have been some special orders we tried to do, whether it be Pelican or other brands, where we've waited 6 months and then eventually just told the customer, I'm sorry, we're refunding your money because I don't ethically feel good about holding on to your money this long. I'll let you know if we ever hear that we're going to get it again. Special orders can be so hit or miss for like not regularly carried things, or we can't even offer it reliably. So that's that. It's all complicated, isn't it? Like, there's just a lot of logistics with this stuff. It's amazing, but it's great. I love it.